Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have more major updates regarding the 2024 election, including Democrats now panicking in some of the Rust Belt states. Apparently, the Senate races, the polling is all out of whack. They're overestimating Dems in basically all the polls because we've seen the dynamic in a lot of these states, especially the Rust Belt, where Trump will do significantly better in the presidential race than the Republican senator will do. Well, apparently those Senate numbers for the Democrats are a little bit overinflated according to their own internal polling data. And we also do have this North Carolina poll. Very good news for Trump. This is RMG. Let me tell you something. That response by Biden and Harris was nothing short of completely pathetic. You know, when it comes to a hurricane or a situation like that, optics are everything. And I think Trump 1000% won the optics just based off the fact that at this point, they're not even treating Biden like a president. So when something like that happens, he's not going to be ready to have a press briefing to answer questions. He was on vacation in Delaware. They were very coy about the situation. Now it's coming out. FEMA doesn't have any money for the people. I mean, you know, we got to look into that, but FEMA possibly doesn't have money for the people because they needed to pay all the illegals coming over and give them money. And so this is just, it's just more of the same with these people. North Carolina, Trump +4. Yes, it is a Republican pollster, but still, I do think you could be looking at that hurricane response by Harris and Biden. And on top of it, I think they made it even worse because there was nothing from Biden for like the first 2 or 3 days as the storm was happening. And then Trump said, all right, I'll go visit there. I'll do something. And then they tried blaming Trump, saying that he was doing it for a photo op when they're the ones that are actually in leadership and should be talking about this and giving the support to the people that were affected by the hurricane. But there was none of that. That's how greedy these people are. They don't do anything and then they blame Trump and say he's the bad guy because he actually tried to help Americans in a very tough situation. You can't win if you're Trump, because if you help them, they call you greedy. If you don't help them, then you're a bad person. It's just ridiculous. There should have been a better response by the Biden administration, but everyone knows that Biden isn't doing anything. There's no incentive for them to really have Biden lead anything because he's not going to be running or he's not running again. So he doesn't have to win any votes. And this is a good North Carolina poll. It is a more Republican pollster, but look at this. There's internal Democratic panic about the Wisconsin Senate race. Baldwin's internals only have her up by 2, and the race is tightening fast. Dems are on track to be outspent from now until Election Day in the state. So that's Wisconsin. And when you look at the Senate polls in Wisconsin, I mean, Baldwin's been up. It's the same thing with Pennsylvania. It's the same thing with Michigan. The Democratic senators are polling significantly better than Republicans in those states, but we are seeing the polls tightening a little bit. And now internals, how about the Michigan internals that came out, not only about the Senate race, but also about the presidency possibly being very close. And then you get the Atlas Intel poll that's got Trump up by 4. So when you look at the Rust Belt, it's not surprising. I mean, it would, like, we have to just look at this election, Biden versus Trump and compare that to Kamala versus Trump. Who's going to perform better in the Rust Belt, Biden or Kamala? I think everybody would say Biden. And so Biden barely beat Trump in all of the Rust Belt states. In Pennsylvania, it was less than a point. In Wisconsin, it was less than a point. Or I think Pennsylvania was like 1.5 points. But Michigan, it was 2 points. Do we really think Harris is going to do better? I think we can pretty much say for sure she's not going to do better than Biden in the Rust Belt. So the margins are only going to get tighter, and they're not only going to get tighter, they're going to flip. And I think Trump's going to win these Rust Belt states by several points, especially Pennsylvania, but also possibly Wisconsin. I mean, you think about Wisconsin. I know there's Milwaukee. I know there's Madison. That's it has been a swing state, but it just feels like a Republican state, especially someone like Harris. And then you've got this thing that came out. Remember, we talked about this a few months ago. They scrubbed this off the internet. This is GovTrack. This is a bipartisan site that just reports on how liberal or conservative different American political figures are. And look at this, ranked most liberal compared to all senators. Being from California, it's not surprising, but still, this just goes to show the rebranding of a Kamala Harris. This was not the Democrats' first choice. They did not want her. There was no primary process. They put her in because Biden was so bad and so old, and this is a panic attempt by them. This is not a normal process. You don't, every 4 years, threaten your incumbent president with the 25th Amendment and removal from office unless you don't comply and step down. This is something completely different. They're trying to make it seem like this is normal. and that, oh, they're fighting for democracy. This is, I mean, they knew one candidate wasn't going to win, so they said, screw all you voters that voted for Biden. We're just going to swap him out because you're all brain dead. You're all going to vote for Harris anyways. And that's exactly what happened. But not enough people are going to vote for Harris. That's the problem for the Democrats. And then they'll start lashing out and blaming white people for racism in America when Trump wins. Who cares? That's going to be hilarious when they do that, because we all know when Trump wins, they're going to have just a total, complete meltdown. We also do have the updated poly market. You can see Donald Trump has flipped Kamala Harris. It's been very, very close recently. When Kamala took over, I mean, Trump had a decent lead, obviously, and she was able to make up for it, and she actually went up by 10. Trump then flipped and went up by about 4 or 5. Then Kamala went back up, and now it looks like Trump, for the first time in almost a month, is back on top in terms of the betting. And this is really not from a ton of polling. It's more so just normal fluctuation, and I would say more nuance in terms of understanding polling and the polling errors that we've seen in previous elections. And, you know, I always mention polling errors, but we really don't even need a polling error this election cycle. If you look at Real Clear Politics, it's so close in every state. You could be, I mean, the polls could be perfect and Trump could win the election. I mean, that's just what they are at this point. It is a stark difference from where we were in 2020 and 2016. And they say, well, you know, the polling's got better. I really don't know. I mean, you've still got Bloomberg spitting out crap. You've still got Cook Political spitting out crap. You've still got Marquette, who's been terrible. You still have these bad pollsters that are really warping the average. And that's why a lot of these models are wrong as well. When you look at all the analytical data being interpreted, and it gives Harris like a 57, 58% chance because they're weighing Democratic polls more than Republican polls, the same polls that were off significantly more when you look at 2020 and 2016. It's not even close. When you do a comparison on 2020 and 2016, you can actually look at the scorecard right here, and you can see this is, where is the 2020? So this is 2020. I mean, look at all the liberal polls. Being on the bottom is worse. That's the worst. Being at the top is the most accurate. Insider Advantage was the most accurate pollster. The 3 pollsters that overfavored Republicans were the most accurate. Wow. Rasmussen did not overfavor Republicans. They overfavored Democrats, but liberals will claim they're the most. I mean, think about it. They're removing Rasmussen from models because they claim there's like collusion within them and the Trump campaign, yet they overrated Democrats in 2020. It's amazing. Like look, there's CNN, there's Quinnipiac, there's New York Times, there's Fox News. Fox News, they're not a conservative pollster. ABC News was horrible. YouGov was terrible. I mean, this is just typical stuff, and they don't even have all the polls that are, you know, that in here. There's other really bad pollsters as well. It's the same thing in 2016. You can see the difference here as well. So it is very clear there is a polling error in 2016 and 2020, and then they'll claim, oh, but what about 2022? This is very good. The pollsters were very accurate. What you have to look at is you have to look at the average error and compare. So let's look at 2022 midterms. The average error, 1.2, 1.2, 1.5, 1.7 goes all the way down to 5.8. Compare that to 2020. 2.4, 2.5, 2.7 goes all the way down to 7.6. They were way more inaccurate in 2020 than they were in 2022. And you did have 4 models overfavor Democrats. You had 2 models that had it 3 models that had it 50-50. And then the rest did overfavor Republicans. But it's really not a crazy error, and the polls were very accurate in 2022. That's a lie that they said. Look at even 2018, basically the same exact thing. We're seeing the same thing when you compare midterm years versus election years. When it's Trump, they underestimate him like crazy. Maybe they've corrected, but I mean, look at this. Why would we believe they've corrected? Look at the 2 times Trump's been involved in the election. I mean, it's basically 90% of the polls have overrated Democrats, most of them by 100% rate, meaning every single one of their polls, their state polls and their popular vote, overrated Democrats relative to how they performed on election night. So it really is remarkable. And that's why I think you're seeing, and I agree, I think you're seeing the alarm bells with the Michigan Senate race for the Democrats, also with now the Wisconsin Senate race. I think these numbers in terms of the Senate are way overinflated in the Rust Belt for Dems, and they could potentially lose 2 of those Senate races, and you could be looking at a catastrophic situation for them in the Senate where Republicans get 54 seats, maybe even 55, but you're seeing like Trump will be up by 5 in a poll in Wisconsin. But then in the Senate race, the Republicans will be down by like 4. There's not going to be that much difference. Sometimes it's even worse than that. Same thing with the Ohio Senate race with Moreno being down. I think a lot of it's warped, and you're going to see voters vote down ballot at a higher rate when it comes to the election night, and it's going to help the senators because of how well Trump does in some of these swing states. If Trump can take a Pennsylvania by 2.5 to 3, you're looking at McCormick having a chance to win, honestly. You are, because he could, even if he performs 2 points worse, if Trump wins by 2.5, he could win by 0.5 point, or it could even be closer in terms of how they perform compared to each other. But either way, guys, it is looking good in the Rust Belt. A lot of these Senate polls seem totally warped, especially in the Rust Belt. That's the second internal Democrat report we've seen now that has said and admitted the first one was in Michigan. This one's in Wisconsin. Also, I mean, we've heard so much about Pennsylvania and what a train wreck that's been for Democrats. That was one of the first leaks that came out. It was Pennsylvania and Arizona and also Georgia. It was looking very, very bad for Democrats in those states. It was really like Pennsylvania and Arizona specifically. Arizona looks, I mean, we were talking Arizona. It looks almost out of reach. It's a lean Republican at this point because when you factor everything in, all the liberal lash out, the rage quit, they say now they're saying they don't want Arizona, they don't need Arizona, they're giving it up. And now it's like, oh, they're going to take Nevada but lose Arizona. Well, no, I mean, Nevada's about 50-50. We know she copied Trump's policy there. And Nevada's been more Republican this cycle. I think Trump's going to win Nevada by about 0.5 point. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.